afternoon, everyone. My name is Nan Richerson, and I am speaking to you today from Salisbury, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar titled The FAQs of Group Teaching. Get your questions answered. This free webinar is brought to you with support from the NAM Foundation and National Association of Music Merchants, the National Piano Foundation, NPF, and Music Teachers National Association, MTNA. So special thanks to all of those organizations. As in the past 5 webinars of this 6-webinar series, there will be 3 presenters today. And since today is a frequently asked questions session, I suppose that I could say there will be 3 panelists today. I will be the first panelist, followed by Dr. Emily Book McGree from Boulder, Colorado, followed by Dr. Rebecca Bellelo from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The 3 of us have divided up the questions that were submitted for this webinar, and we will be answering those to the best of our abilities. If you happen to have follow-up questions while we are responding, please do ask those in the chat, and we will direct the speaker to those questions and try to answer those along the way. Following our responses to the questions that have been submitted prior to this webinar, we will have time for general questions. And then after that, if there is time left over, we will disperse into small groups or breakout rooms for discussion and sharing of ideas. So I will start us off with our first question today. And let me just move, oops, I went too far. So the first submitted question is kind of several questions in one, but it deals with teaching group piano at the undergraduate or collegiate level. So it says, I am teaching group piano for music majors at the college level to prepare for proficiency. I am interested to know how you assess mastery of skills at the college level. How often do you perform quizzes and tests? And then how do you structure your assessments? So all things that everyone who has ever taught group piano has to really think through. And there's not necessarily one right way to do any of that, but I'll be glad to share what has worked for me over the years. I would like to just start off with addressing this question by thinking about the goals and objectives of whatever class I am teaching. Depending on what university you attend or where you work, you might have a 2-sequence group piano class. You might have 4-semester sequence group piano. You might have 6-semester group piano. So every university is a little bit different. But depending on the semester that I am teaching, I'm always thinking about the goals and objectives that I have. Now, I'm not going to read all of these to you today, but I will post a link to my Class Piano 1 syllabus for you to take a look at just as a resource, and all of these will be in there. But I'm thinking at the end of this semester, these are all of the things that I want my students to be able to do. So I'm going to start with that, thinking, okay, I'm going to think, how do I want them to look as pianists, as musicians? How do I want them to talk about their music? So just beginning with the end in mind as I think about assessing them and how I'm going to go about sequencing the content that I'll be presenting throughout the course. So thinking about the objectives first. And then how am I going to grade the students? Because that's definitely what they are all thinking about when they're sitting in class on the first day. What do I need to do well, to get to the next level? I have to have these classes to graduate. So I break down my grade this way: daily playing quizzes, exams, and then reflective writing assignments. The reflective writing assignments, that is a requirement for the university where I teach, so you may or may not have that as part of the grading scale where you are. So after I take a look at the breakdown of my scale, the big part of the grade is the daily playing quizzes, and I call those DPQs. So when I take a look at a student's DPQ, these are all of the things that I'm looking at. I'm going to come back to this slide in just a second. I want to go back here. The daily playing quizzes for my students happen between every single class because I have learned a lot about teaching college students over the last 20 years. And if you do not put it as an assignment that they turn in, the likelihood that they're going to do it on their own is very, very small. So I like to assess my students between every class. I don't like to use class time to do it though. So what I have my students do is I have them video themselves playing 1 to 2 daily playing quizzes, and they do that on their cell phones. They'll prop their cell phone up at the edge of the piano. They will know what exercises that they need to play. Sometimes those are harmonization exercises. Sometimes they are technical exercises. It might be a short 8-measure reading where they're just transposing it up or down a step. It could be a repertoire piece where we're focusing on dynamics. So daily playing quizzes, those can be anything that kind of relate back to that general list of goals and objectives that I have for the course. So if I meet on a Monday, the students know that by Wednesday, they're going to have 2 or 3 daily playing quizzes that they have to go into a practice room, record, and submit to me before Wednesday. So I am always assessing my students. Now, you think, gosh, that's a lot of things that you have to watch. But if you assign students videos to submit, I have been really surprised at how much better the playing is and how much easier it is to grade. It is simple to blow off a quiz if your teacher stands behind you and says, okay, let's have here you do it, and it's over and it goes poorly. But if you give a student the opportunity to go into a practice room and record themselves, and then they can record it again if they don't like it, and then they can record it again if they don't like it, you are going to get better results that way. So I have found that this type of assessment is very successful. I get very high quality level quizzes and recordings from my students this way. Sometimes I will have them send the quizzes to one another. Sometimes they have to post their quizzes so that they're public to the students in their class. And then that really does up the level that you receive because they know that not only is the professor looking at the quiz, but their peers are also going to be listening to see how their performance is. I have at my university the platform called Canvas. That's similar to like if you have Blackboard. Many universities just have one platform where all students are getting their course information and where they're submitting videos or papers. But I did daily playing quizzes via cell phone video long before I ever had Canvas or Google Drive or anything. So if you're thinking, well, yay, that works for you, you have Canvas through your university, you don't have to have that. I used to do this just with my cell phone. I bravely gave my students my cell phone number, and I would put my cell phone on do not disturb at 9 p.m. and then they would be sending me their daily playing quizzes via video, and I would be grading them that way. So you do not have to have a high level platform, although it does make it nice and simple because everything's in one spot. You can do a group text with your whole class where everybody sees when everyone has submitted. You can do all of this on Google Drive. And of course, that's completely free, and have your students have a Gmail account that goes along with that. So there are many avenues where you can have students submit. The way that I grade my DPQs, I like to say that I'm a pretty stringent grader, but I'm also very flexible because the goal is that students do well, and I want to give them the whole semester to do well. So I grade them hard, but they can submit and resubmit their quizzes as many times as they want until the semester is over. People learn at different rates. People come to the class with different backgrounds. So if I can give them feedback, then they go practice some more. That's what we want. And they submit it again. Great. I'll change their grade. So these are the things I'm looking for. This is what my rubric looks like. It's the same throughout the entire semester. I'll tweak it, give or take a specific assignment, but I'm looking at continuity, note accuracy, rhythmic accuracy, articulation, dynamics, tempo, hand placement. All my DPQs are out of 10 points. So that is how I assess my students on a daily basis. I have between 40 and 50 daily playing quizzes per semester per student. And I have found that it's pretty successful. I've done it for about 10 years this way, and used Canvas some of the time, Google Classroom some of the time, Google Drive some of the time, and simply just my cell phone. So as long as you have access to video, you could do it this way if you wanted to. And then finally, when my students submit, this is just a picture of what it looks like. I have to be able to see their hands, and then I can kind of grade. I put my rubric beside their video, and you can see how that works. And then finally, oh, that's the next question. Like I mentioned, I will put my syllabus in the chat for today, and you can take a look at that. And hopefully that would help answer any questions that you might have regarding the specifics of the assessment. Do we have any follow-up questions before I move on to my next question?
Yes, we do have one, Nan. Someone asked how you handle students in quarantine that are at home without a piano or keyboard.
Okay, well, that has actually happened to me this year. When that happens, I had to be really creative because my dean said, well, do the best you can. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't make a piano appear in this person's apartment. What can I do? So I really was creative about it. I found on Amazon one of those like rollout keyboards. I mean, horrible quality, but it was $30. I said, you can buy this and have it sent to your house and video yourself playing on that. Or, I mean, you can't assume that a student has 30 extra dollars that they can spend on something like that. I gave them the dimensions of the keys so that they could draw it on paper, and I made them play it silently and video it and send it to me. So that's what I did during quarantine for last semester because COVID came upon all of us as quite a surprise. Now, we were prepared this semester for that to happen so that if a student went into quarantine, we had a place they could go to get, like just a 60 key keyboard that they could take with them. Like we had things prepared. But when it was something that was a surprise, those are the options that I gave them. It wasn't great, but it was better than nothing.
One more question, Nan. We got a question about your tempo grading. And if you use your tempo grading within your assessment for consistent tempo or accurate tempo in terms of the appropriateness for that exercise.
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, thank you. I use it both ways. If it's marked lento and they're playing allegro or vice versa, then I'll dock them for tempo. If it's not a steady tempo, I'll dock them for tempo. And there's room for comments the way that in my rubric, and I will type a sentence or two to specify for that. Okay, well, I will move on to the next submitted question that I plan on addressing today, and that is this. What do you do in a group class when some of your students have practiced a lot and some of your students haven't practiced at all? I think I put a typo in there. I'm so sorry. Well, that happens every time I've ever taught a class. You've got some students that are moving further ahead than others. And how do I still have a successful class despite the discrepancies and people who are prepared or who just might be moving a little bit faster? In the very first webinar that Emily, Rebecca, and I did together, I talked about providing choices for students so that everyone could always participate. And I went ahead and just copied and pasted this slide from that webinar into this webinar. If students are not prepared, you can still go on with your lesson plan if you've got content that you know you need to address, and you provide those students choices, and they can choose to do something that they are comfortable with right then and there as they are sitting in class. Sometimes, as you can see in number 1, they are just listening with intent, which I call laser listening. Or you could jump down to number 7. Maybe they're not ready to play at all, but maybe they're a vocal major, or maybe they sing in their high school choir. They can sing while everybody else plays. Maybe they just play one hand while everyone else plays. But in my classes, I just have a rule that everyone is doing something, and I will not tell you what it is you have to do. You do something that makes you comfortable, and there are many, many choices. So we move forward and we do the best we can with the choices that we have. All right. So do we have follow-ups?
No follow-ups for that
No
one.
follow-ups there. Okay. Well, thank you. And I will now pass the it is now time for Emily McGree to answer the questions that were submitted that she will be taking on.
All right. Hello, folks. As Nan mentioned, I am coming to you from Boulder, Colorado. I teach both at the Lamont School of Music at the University of Denver, and I have my own private studio as well, where I do lots of RMM group classes for all ages. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions that we got today as well. The first is, what resources do you recommend for a flipped classroom or a 2020-20 teaching environment? I'll answer the first question here first. For the flipped classroom, I think there are a lot of things that you can do. I think I saw Kay Lowry's name on the list of folks that are with us today. She has a couple of wonderful resources on Leela Viss's website called Flip It. There's one for elementary and then one for intermediate as well. I will post the links to those after I'm finished speaking in the chat box. But Kay, if you are here, if I did in fact see your name correctly, go ahead and post that if you have them. Leela also has a summer camp curriculum that you can buy too, that's all based off of the flipped classroom curriculum. I will also say for a lot of my classes, I will do flipped theory. Rebecca's going to be talking a little bit later about some theory resources that we use regularly, but those are things that can be done in advance of classes all of the time, and there's some wonderful apps and websites that can help you do that. I also send a lot of webinars and videos to my students. So if I want them to be working on a technique exercise in advance of a repertoire piece that we have the next week, I might send them a video and walk them through a certain exercise to practice through that week, so they can be more successful when we do the repertoire the next week. I will also do some off-bench theory time too within classes, and those can be addressed prior to the week with videos and webinars as well. So don't discount YouTube and all of those fun things that we have out there for technology right now. I think we've all found some wonderful things during COVID, and I will continue to use those throughout classes from here on out. Now, the 2020-20 teaching environment, for those of you who may not be familiar with this is kind of like having stations set up in your class. So you might have 20 minutes where you're teaching a private lesson, and then 20 minutes where a student is practicing, and then 20 minutes where there's maybe a theory station where students are working on, and then they rotate through. So there's no actual group teaching happening in that environment. I will say that I tried this before I developed my own group class curriculums, and it wasn't for me, but you have to do what works best for your studio. I know a lot of teachers do a combined duo lesson in between two private lessons. So there are some creative ways that you can involve that within your studio. So I don't have any resources that I necessarily recommend specifically for that, but I will say that there are a lot of theory things that we'll be talking about here in a bit, so that might be helpful for a theory station. Now, for homogeneous group lesson, that also includes individualization. This is a little bit of a tough one, and I think that there are lots of different scenarios that you can use group teaching. For example, down at the Lamont School of Music for our piano prep program, we have weekly private lessons and also weekly group classes. So we have the group environment, but also have the addition of the private. So that's a possibility. I will also say in my own studio, all of my private lesson students also have a once monthly group class that they attend. So if you're really interested in keeping that individualized attention there for students, there are also ways to provide group classes. Summer camps are another wonderful way to do this. So if you have students who are more interested in the private lesson environment through the year, maybe they would have some fun playing some ensembles and doing group classes throughout the summer. So just some different creative ways to think about that. Nan, Rebecca, sorry, any follow-up questions before we move on?
Sure. Okay, we did have one. Emily, can you tell us what is a flipped classroom? Can you define that or describe that?
Yes. So essentially, that means you are giving students the resources to learn about something before coming into the classroom. So I'll give an example from Kay's Flip It. The elementary videos that she provides, or activities, are about learning the keys on the piano. So they're giving students resources in order to learn a concept before they experience it in the classroom so that you can expand on that and have some more creative activities happening in the class. Does that answer that one? Okay, moving on. All right, do you have any resources for training teachers who wish to teach group classes? This is also, we were talking amongst the three of us. I wish that I had like a giant binder or a set of videos to pass along to you, but there's not like one size fits all thing for this, I don't think. If you do not already have a couple of textbooks, I would recommend purchasing those. One is the Teaching Piano in Groups. This is written by Chris Fisher. All of these can be found super easily on Amazon. He walks through group teaching in a lot of different environments and has a really wonderful appendix at the back that gives you some examples of different types of activities that you can use. So my pedagogy students have found this really helpful for giving them a starting place in terms of planning activities for their classes. And then I will also say dynamic group piano teaching. So this one's written by Pam Pike. It's a wonderful newer resource out there. And she does a fabulous job of providing all of the different materials out there and kind of giving a review or a background of all of them. So it gives you an idea of that. And she as well has some different activities that you can use with your students and provides a lot of examples for ways to assess different types of classes. So those are great things. I will also say, you know, don't discount the option to just take a graduate class at your local university. At Lamont, one of the classes that I teach down there is all group teaching techniques. So we spend the entire quarter just talking about this. So you might have a resource for that available near you. Also finding a mentor, finding someone, getting to know someone who's already been doing this for a fair bit of time and watching them teach. I think that's really the thing. Private lessons, group lessons, whatever the case might be, we learn the most by watching other people teach. And there are a lot of resources out there for that. So trying to find someone to watch. Any follow-ups, Rebecca? No, okay.
Sorry, no.
Okay, this I put this one in really, really big font because this is the clincher, right? How do I motivate students during COVID? Really, really tough. Can be tough anyway. I would say that I found a couple of things that have been really helpful for my group classes. And again, I'm doing younger kids and adults classes on a weekly basis throughout COVID, and all of those have been remote on Zoom. I would say that practice partners have been really helpful for us. So I have students that send videos back and forth between each other through text. And that keeps them connected and also holds them accountable. They're more motivated to practice if they know that they have to perform for someone. And Flipgrade, I've talked about this in previous webinars as well. So if you want more information about that, check out our latest webinar on pianonet.com. And then having some assessment and goal development opportunities, I think, are really important. The week before Thanksgiving, I just did an event that I call Piano Peaks Day because I live in the Indian Peaks neighborhood of Colorado. And all of my students were responsible, including my group class students, for submitting videos for their repertoire pieces and a section of scales or technique. And then they took a theory test too. Nan was wonderful enough to judge this one for me this year. But just having the idea that someone else is going to be providing them feedback, it gave them a motivating factor throughout the semester to work towards. And I think really helped with practice, especially in November. And Nan talked a little bit about submitting recordings for her group classes, for collegiate group classes. I will say I did this by recording this year too. Typically, this is something that we do live, but I found that my students actually practiced way more because they could keep recording over and over and over again. So I think that might actually be something that I keep even after COVID is gone. We do regular performances in class. I think, especially for the younger students, that peer pressure is super helpful for them. Positive peer pressure. We make sure that we are constructive about our comments. And building a community. So we talk a lot about, and we have done this in previous webinars, about making sure that you have time within your class, whether it's for younger kids or for adults, of having just like some talk time, find out about what's going on in their day. And I think building that community also increases motivation for them to come back to classes, especially for your adults too that are moving in between sessions. They're more likely to sign up again with you if they have built a community together. And I also do some challenges within my group classes too. So these might be, I do 30-piece challenges, which is from Wendy Stevens' Compose Create. She's got some templates for that there quite frequently with my group classes, where they get to keep track of how many repertoire pieces they have learned, and we work towards some sort of a prize at the end. We also have some practice challenges that we'll do. Typically when we are in person, I will have students, like we have a big like mason jar, and if they have completed their practice goals for the week and their practice expectations, they get to put a pom-pom or a cotton ball in that jar. And once we fill it up to the top, then there's some sort of a candy prize or a pizza party or something fun. And you can do those sorts of things online too. I just mail my students candy or something as a prize. And I actually did a drop one day where I drove around to all of their houses and just left something for them on their porch. So those things can still be super motivating throughout COVID. And I think there was one question on the last screen that I totally forgot based on answering, but there were questions on how you teach online right now. And I would say I have multiple classes that I meet with on a regular basis. I'll go back for a second here. Through COVID, online. And this is obviously a lot more challenging during doing this online than in person. And I will have to say, like, we are all figuring this out together. I don't have the magic bullet answer for this, but I can tell you a couple of things that have worked for me. I do use Zoom because I find that's what my families are most comfortable with. They use it in a lot of their other aspects of life. So it wasn't like they had to relearn a brand new platform for this. We play a lot of games to encourage interaction between students, because that's one of the biggest challenges, right? If they're not all in the same room together in person, then it's harder to build that community. So you have to be really careful about your choice of activities when you are online. I ask specific questions to students. So I will call them out and make sure that we are rotating around, and so that everybody has a voice. So our more introverted students are still responding, because if you just open it up to the classroom, chances are you're going to get some kiddos who do not feel quite as comfortable answering. We do regular performances again, where even after the end of an exercise or a repertoire piece that we've worked on, I will ask for volunteers to play it out loud. We do a lot of students muted and I play through their microphone, so they're playing along with me at their house. And I send a lot of recordings to them to work on duets throughout the week too. So I might send a teacher accompaniment part or just a different ensemble part so that they can practice with that at home. And then I have a lot of students, after doing that, will actually perform with the duet recording in class. So they're still participating in that ensemble, but doing it with a recording that I have sent them previously. I would say the most important thing for this is video positioning. So just like if you are teaching at the front of a lab, you can look around the room, and even if you can't physically hear a student, you know pretty much if they're in the right place and they know what they're doing, right? Like you can watch their hand, you can watch the notes that they're playing. And the same thing is true for Zoom classes. As long as their video positioning is accurate, I'm able to play at my piano through their muted mics and watch and make sure that they are all on track with me. So that is still possible as long as their video is accurate. And I would say one of the most helpful things for me is actually having a webcam too. So I have a webcam that is over top of my keyboard so that they can see my hands actually playing on the screen. And I use a lot of manipulatives to move around to show them a real tangible way of where their hand positions need to be, because that can be one of the most challenging things of online lessons. So those are my questions. Rebecca, any follow-ups?
No, you got it.
Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Rebecca Bellelo.
All right, thanks, Emily. And let me get my questions pulled up here on my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here with you today. And thank you to everyone who sent in these questions prior to our webinar. The first set of questions that I am going to address deals with copyright issues. Oh, and I need to change it over to, there we go, to that view. So the first set of questions that I will address deals with copyright issues. And this is really important right now as we are really doing a lot of our recitals and performances online, recording them, posting them to platforms like YouTube, social media, maybe even your own website. So this is certainly relevant right now for us. I will say I am not an expert at all in copyright law at all. And so I really went to MTNA to read about this information. So I'm going to try to answer these questions to the best of how I'm understanding of what I've read from MTNA right now. So the first question reads, should teachers ask parents to sign a release form if the recital is unlisted on YouTube? Great question. So MTNA doesn't address any differences between if a video is as an unlisted video, if it's posted as an unlisted, a private, or a public video. MTNA doesn't differentiate between those options, which is what you can do on YouTube. But they do say, MTNA does recommend that you get a permission form from parents. Or if the student is not a minor, you get their permission as well. So yes, obtain written permission, again, from the student or the parent if they are a minor. That would also include for a competition as well, to have that release form. Okay, can students and teachers perform copyrighted material on a YouTube channel that is unlisted? Okay, here we go. We're getting into some gray area. So part of this depends on who is going to be watching this recital. And so we assume that when it is unlisted, it is a smaller, more limited audience of who is actually going to be watching that. So music performed in a private, resident, or an educational setting like a lesson or a private studio, we would even consider this like a private recital. It's by a selected group of students. We don't think of that as a public performance. So we think of that again as a smaller, more private setting for a small group of family and friends. So that would not require an additional music license. So I'm going to say if it's unlisted or even on a private YouTube channel, that you don't have to have a license because it's for an educational purpose. Okay, the next two questions, I'm going to take both of those together. If the program is made for public viewing, does the teacher need permission from the people who own the copyrights to the music? And the next question, if the program is only seen by a limited private audience, such as nursing home residents, does the teacher need a copyright license? So that last question, I've already sort of talked about. If the video of a recital is going to a limited private audience, like you're going to send it to nursing home residents, that's a small, limited number of who will be watching it. It's just for that one setting. So no, you don't need copyright license. When you open it up for public viewing, so it's available for everyone, then we do consider that a public performance of music. And that is where you might want to consider getting a music license from ASCAP, ASCAP, or BMI. MTNA also mentions another music licensing organization. I'm not familiar with this, SESAC. So if anybody has information about that one and they want to put those in the chat, please do that. But that public performance on a platform is where you might want to consider, checking into getting a license for copyrighted music. MTNA also says to check with the platform that you're using. So some platforms like YouTube or Facebook may have some licensing agreements already in place with copyrighted music. So you might want to check with them as well and read over their information about posting performances. I will also read this of what's on the MTNA website. They actually say it's very difficult to answer questions like this because it will depend on the platform you use and who holds the rights to the song or songs in a video. Generally, you can post the recital to Facebook or YouTube without any fear of terrible things happening to you What they mean is that you might just be asked to have your video taken down. You can have some fines in place, but it's likely not going to happen. You probably would just be asked to remove your video from the platform. Okay, and that last question, if the teacher is given a stipend for the program, does that violate any copyrights? I would say yes for that one. Whenever you are making money on a performance that is under from music that is under copyright, then yes, you will need a license in order to do that. Again, going back to what I've read from MTNA, if no admission fees are charged or proceeds of any admissions is going to educational purposes or a charitable organization, then musical performances by teachers and students may take place without a license or permission. So that was a lot of information, but really great to know and to think about during this time. Is there any follow-up questions that I will try to answer?
No, Rebecca, I think you did a great job.
Oh boy, thanks. Okay. All right, my next question gets to be a little bit lighter. So what are some helpful tools or resources for teaching advanced theory concepts? So we have given a webinar about games and how to use games in teaching online and in our lessons. So I would say if you can use a game to teach a theory concept, I would start with that. I'm sure most of us had theory workbooks or worksheets that we would do to learn theory, but really today you can really, a game can be a means to an end. A game can be a way to teach a theory concept, and it doesn't have to be that pen or pencil to paper rather. So if you can find a game to teach a theory concept, I would try that. And like I mentioned, we've given lots of webinars mentioning different games throughout all of these. So hopefully you can find some of those if you go back and watch our recordings. The website, I'm sure everybody has been to this website and used it in some way or shape or form, musictheory.net. And, it's perfect when you're teaching online because all you have to do is hit that share screen button, and then your students on the other end can see that website and you can go through an exercise with them. Their exercises are customizable, so can really be, flexible to your needs and your students' needs. And the last resource I'll mention is Classroom Maestro. Sorry, I started getting a little bit of feedback there. It might have been a mic that turned on somewhere. But Classroom Maestro is an on-screen interactive keyboard. Great, thank you. An on-screen interactive keyboard that you have on your computer, and you do connect your computer to a keyboard by just a USB cable. So you would demonstrate something on your keyboard, and then it would show up on this interactive keyboard, and also a music staff. So think of it like a blackboard on your computer. And then again, you can hit that share screen button if you are teaching online and using Zoom. So your students can see that, and you can demonstrate any theory concept on this, anything from just a single pitch to intervals, to chords, to a scale, a hand position, just any theory concept. If you've taught in a lab and you've seen the visualizer that is usually backed by the teacher, think of this as just like a modern day visualizer that you could put up for students to see the interactive keyboard lighting up, as well as that music staff. Okay, and I'm going to go to my last question. Or were there any follow-up questions from that? Okay, great. All right, so here's my last question. What are ways to recruit new students, especially now during the pandemic? So recruiting, to me, when I think of recruiting and trying to get new students, I always think about what is my message that I'm trying to get out to the public about my service, about my program. What do I want the community to know about about my studio. And I always, even in today's digital age, I always say the best way is still by word of mouth. Now, I think what happens is by word of mouth, you might hear your name or your business name, right? That might be passed along from a trusted family member or friend, but then they usually still go to online and try to check out, what is available about that place online. If it's a website, if it's a Facebook group, business page. So that word of mouth is still, I think, number one, but then they do sort of their check online to see what they can find out online, even in our digital age. So I'd recommend by that word of mouth, start with your local music store. If you hopefully you have a good relationship with your local music store in town, or if it's a piano store, and tell them you are looking for students, you would like to add more students, you have openings. Tell them if you can please refer them, to you. These are the ages you can teach, the levels that you would like, and ask them, can they please refer students to you? You can also talk to just other teachers, your local MTA organization, and tell other teachers in your area, because they may have cut back. I know in Baton Rouge, we've had several teachers that have decided to not teach. And so they're sending students to other teachers. They may be teaching limited days or limited hours. So be sure that other teachers in your area know that you would like more students, you have openings, and please send them if they could please refer them to you. So start with those, and then you can go to your online places. Go to any free place that you can get your name or your studio name out there. Sign up for anything free online. The good places to go, the top places to go would probably be Google Business. If you haven't already signed up for Google Business, you can go to that. Definitely make a Facebook group page. And then Nextdoor, if you're familiar with Nextdoor, it's sort of a modern day neighborhood association type, not quite social media, but just for neighborhood areas. So you could put your business on Nextdoor. It's a great one. If you have a little bit of money to spend on advertising, I think some of the best places are blogs that are local to your area. So don't think you have to find a mom's blog that has hundreds of thousands of followers all over the United States. Find a blog for your area that maybe is targeted toward families, or targeted toward moms, or targeted toward, senior citizens if you're looking to recruit adults for group classes. And then Facebook ads. We could probably do a whole webinar on Facebook ads and running those, but you can be very specific with Facebook ads about your target audience and who's going to see those. So you might investigate that. And then just any digital resources from local ads or newspapers, but I think you might get a little more bang for your buck from something that they might run digitally, like a digital newsletter, or again, a digital blog of some sorts. Last thing I'll mention about this is you might consider doing something a little bit different than you have for your normal yearly lesson schedule. Especially right now, we have a lot of people interested in buying piano lessons to give as a gift for the holidays. So you might offer, a package of 4 lessons or 6 lessons, and then those folks could buy a gift certificate, give that to, a family member if they're wanting to do that. And then it's a little bit shorter commitment. For you, they can sort of see if they like it. Hopefully they'll turn into a longer student. But you might offer a package of lessons for the holidays right now. And then you could also do a seasonal camp. We've mentioned the summer camps. And so I know in our area, sometimes in the past, seasonal camps have been something that parents look for when kids are out of school. So it could be something for your own students, or just for beginner students, maybe looking for a holiday camp this season. So are there any follow-up questions after that? Okay, well, we are now going to open up to any general questions that you may have, because those were all of our questions that were submitted before the webinar today. So we're going to open this up to any general questions that you may have typed in our chat box. And Richard is going to moderate this for us. So I am Let's see, going to get out of my screen share, and we'll turn this back over to Richard, who can talk us through any of these questions.
Okay, I haven't seen anything come up. I did see one that was already addressed earlier. I mean, but now would be the time, folks, if you have any questions to type in. Anything to do with the subject matter that we've covered today, or anything else. Don't everybody jump in at once.
Well, I don't know if you saw this, Richard, but we just got a question that I think would be geared toward Rebecca, since she just mentioned seasonal camps. But it said, I'm interested in the idea of seasonal camps. I've stopped offering summer camps in person years ago, when they were only interested in all-day camps that would keep the kids busy while they were at work. So Rebecca, would you mind to speak in a little more detail about the seasonal camps?
Absolutely. So this might be a little hard to do if you are doing an online camp, because you're right that when parents are putting their kids in camp, it is, partly some place for their kids to go while they're at work, when their kids are out of school, right? But they still have to go to work. So, and that's part of, for those summer camps, we do half days. So we do 9 to 12. And some parents will say, we can't do that because we're looking for something all day. So depending on your area right now, you might could have 3 or 4 kids, wearing masks. If you have divided spaces in your rooms, you might could have 3 to 4, very small number of kids come for a half a day. And that would, like you said, give the parents some place for their children to go. It could be a beginner camp. So you could teach very beginner things to kids, maybe learn, jingle bells, maybe do a few little Christmas type things, feed them a snack. They could have them bring lunch. If it's a longer camp, just really think about, what you're going to do with those kids all day. But I think it could certainly be done. We certainly all want to be safe and responsible right now. If it were online, think about how, schools structure their online classes for kids to be in that for a long time during the day. But yeah, that's absolutely what parents are looking for. So I think it could be a really good thing if you're wanting to do that right now.
Okay, I found another one here. Group classes, how to work with ESL/refugee students who do not have Western music education background, specifically regarding college job, music group, intro to piano classes. Anybody want to address that one?
I'm not sure that I understand the question. So if you wouldn't mind to retype
That's Elena Loftman. If you want to unmute yourself and maybe explain that a little bit.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my question. So we have a huge refugee population in our area, and this semester I kind of struggled with having students in an intro to piano class for non-majors, where we have to follow a college curriculum and syllabus, but many concepts were very new and very foreign to them, and it was very much a cultural thing. Does anybody have experience with this that can shed some light on how to work with groups that are extremely culturally different, especially when it's blended with other students?
That sounds like a really tough one. I can't say that I can speak personally to that. So, I mean, does anyone else in this group, there's 44 of us in here, has anyone else had that experience and can offer any ideas or suggestions? Because I don't want to speak for Rebecca and Emily, but I don't think the two of you have either. Yeah, so I can't say that I have any personal anecdotes for that. And then maybe you could also talk about some of the things you tried.
Well, I felt like I was really grasping at straws. Things I did was I found that if I recorded all of my video quizzes in advance, so they had demonstrations, and especially almost like a flipped classroom of each individual piece. And then I could refer them to those during practice. During class, I would bring around a expo marker and write note names on the keys if we needed to move along, because they couldn't stay in just unit 1 to fulfill the requirements of the course, right? But as we went along, to assist them in that way, write them on the piano keys. No, they're not fancy, expensive pianos, don't worry. I tried to encourage them to do office hours best I could, but I just feel really stuck with what I can do, because my other students who are not in this minority background, they didn't have a problem. They were really flying by and the material was really easy for them. So to have these different groups where you actually need to follow a syllabus, and one group is struggling learning the material, but the other group, it's too easy and they need to move quicker.
Well, this is a different situation. I have had, where I have had piano, or I've had music majors in class with non-music majors. So, you're seeing the diverse levels of background as they enter. Some people have never seen the music staff in their life, and some people are incredibly proficient just on a different instrument. So, when I have had that in small numbers, in some ways I've split the class in two, and we'll still all meet together, but I might have a different, or form a different syllabus for the students who are piano majors or music majors versus the students who are in the course as, this is an elective, this is some types of arts and humanities requirement, and that they don't need to move on like the music majors need to move on and test out proficiency. So I'm not sure what the requirements of your university are, but I know that I have had flexibility where I can say, okay, well, this person is in this class just for an arts and humanities credit. How can I best educate them so they can be an advocate for the arts also while meeting the needs of the music majors who can be proficient? So I'm not sure if a conversation with a dean or a department chair could, maybe you've already had all of those, I don't know, but I know that that was super helpful for me when I had such a dichotomy amongst my student population.
Okay, there was one that came through that says a follow-up to summer camps and group classes. This is from Suzanne. In my case, the problem is I don't want to do all day or half day classes. What would Rebecca or the others recommend for structuring and marketing shorter classes, for example, 1 hour classes?
I think doing like boot camp weeks can actually be incredibly beneficial for students. I've done it in the past where we just have the same, if I'm teaching a 45-minute class, we just do a 45-minute class every single day. And the amount of material that you can get through in that week is large, and it's really fun for the students to see the progress during that. So I've actually tried it with adults and kiddos before. So if you're not in a space where you want to do an all day or half day camp, just those boot camp sessions can be a really good idea too.
Anybody else? Okay. Again, from Suzanne, this is a little earlier. Oh, actually, that's the same one, sorry. I don't see anything else unless anybody else does on the panel.
I haven't seen any questions pop up either. Nan, I'm wondering if you could pop up the screen that we can show everyone. This is our last webinar of this semester, but we do have some dates coming up in the spring where we're going to be addressing some pretty specific topics there, like studio spotlights, looking at different ways that teachers set up their studios, how to involve movement in classes. And of course, we have our National MTNA conference happening in March, and we'll have a lot of wonderful sessions then about RMM classes for adults and children. In April, we'll be talking specifically about games, and then in May, we'll finish up with some summer camp tips and tricks for you all. So we hope that you will join us again in this spring semester at some point. And we really appreciate you spending another hour with us. And we loved seeing your questions, and hopefully some of our responses were helpful in some way, shape, or form. So thank you so much for joining us. And we'll leave the screen up for just a bit. But we hope that you have a great rest of your December and have a refreshing break over the holiday at some point. I'll leave this up for one more minute just in case anybody's out there writing down dates. And I also would like to remind everyone that Richard will be posting today's webinar on pianonet.com. So if there's anything that you wanted to rewatch or a resource that you wanted to grab that you weren't able to today, that will be available for you by the end of this week, I'm sure. Richard's always very fast on those things. So do check out pianonet.com. And thank you so much for joining us. And we hope you have a great rest of your December.